All right. Good afternoon, and thank you for joining us for another episode of NDI Presents. Today we have Larry Lee with us again. He's going to be going over some peer review training for project planning, project monitoring and control, and PPQA. So I'm going to go ahead and let Larry take over. And if you guys have any questions, as usual, throw them into the YouTube questions area, and I'll go ahead and forward them off to Larry so he can answer them in turn. All right. Thanks again. And here you go, Larry.
Thanks, Dave. How are you? Good morning. Good afternoon, everybody. And once again, I'm Larry Lee. I'm the corporate QA here, and doing this training to help get you PMs ready to cross-evaluate each other, to do peer reviews. And without any further ado, let's share my screen here and we'll get started with the presentation. Can you see that okay? All right. Well, as with last time, for those of you that joined us last week, we will be pretty much the same this week, but for those that are new, then this will be entirely new to you. But for those that did join us last week, just bear with us. A lot will be the same, similar kind of format. Going to go straight forward through what it is you need to do to cross-evaluate each other's projects, and it will help you all, even with your own project, as you understand better what auditors are looking for, and better how to run your project, how to stay compatible and compliant with NDI's standards and policies and procedures. So this, as David said, was our PM cross-evaluation audit training for project planning, project monitoring and control, and process and product quality and assurance. And once again, my name is Larry Lee. Our agenda for today, much like last week, is we're going to talk about project planning, project monitoring and control, and process and product quality assurance. Quick introduction here, and we'll give the purpose. I'll show you how to do it, and then we'll go over some of the findings from both our CMMI audit as well as our ISO audit that were in February and March. So here we go. Once again, my name is Larry Lee. I'm a certified CMMI associate. I am the corporate QA and certification specialist for NDI, and I was the CMMI NDI organizational project lead, and I was project assistant for our ISO 9001 certification that we just received back in the end of March. So what's the purpose that we're doing this training? We're doing this for several different reasons. First and foremost, to improve NDI's processes. Doing these internal audits helps to identify whether our policies, procedures, standard operating procedures, processes, all those things are still valid, or if they're in need of review, and they may need to be changed. But we have to have something to evaluate against. And that's what these audits do. We have checklists and criteria that we look for and evaluate against, so we can help determine whether our policies and procedures are right, or whether they need to be changed, or whatever the case there. It's also doing internal audits helps keep our project on track with NDI's standards. We've set standards in place by our policies and procedures, expected processes, and we want to make sure that each project stays on track with that, with the understanding that each project is somewhat individual, much like humans. There's some individuality there, and we want to be aware of that and cognizant of that, and keep that in mind. But certainly, as much as possible, and mostly, that we should be following the standards set forth, that we do what we say we do. It's also for external certification requirements, both for ISO 9001 and for CMMI Level 3. There are peer review requirements, and this cross-evaluation across projects by the PMs is part of that peer review requirement, and that's an important thing. In addition to having peer reviews inside of the project amongst development teams, we will have peer reviews across projects by way of the PMs doing these audits upon each other's projects. As well, then, the next thing is to ensure quality in our projects. We want to make sure that our projects we put out a quality product. And audits and reviews determine areas where we may be non-compliant, either in a standard like an ISO standard or against our own standards, our own policies and procedures. So we want to check for compliance in these things. That's what keeps us in a quality state. And it helps in cleaning up non-compliances in our projects. It helps us to put out a quality product and improves customer satisfaction, which is very important, and customer confidence. They want to be able to rely on us to put out a quality product, to be able to show that we are in control of our work and that we have standards in place and that we follow those standards and rules. Furthermore, it's important to teach each other. Someone who's a newer PM can learn from more experienced PMs. As they do these audits, they learn more about what's expected, what auditors are looking for, what's expected by NDI. So we get to teach each other in this process. You also get a broader view of what all NDI is doing. It's very easy to get pigeonholed into your own project and not realize everything that the company is doing. So by evaluating other projects and taking these audit checklists and looking at other projects, it helps you to understand what's going on across the company. And you learn by doing. And as you look at another project, you might see something that another PM is doing that might help you out in your project. It's also to make your project more efficient. We certainly want to have efficiency in how we manage our projects and as our projects go, the more efficient, the better. And as well, finally, but not leastly, is for personal growth. Certainly all of us need and want to grow personally in our careers and in our lives. So as we learn new things and learn to do more things, it helps us to grow. So this is the basic purpose as to why we're doing this training and why you will be doing the audits against each other starting in June. Just as an example, we'll just kind of jump right into how you do it. Like last week we talked about configuration management, requirements management, and measurement analysis. This week, as we said, we're going to talk about project monitoring and controlling, and process and product quality assurance. Let's start off with project planning, and here's the checklist for that. We will jump out to Confluence for that. So here is the project planning audit criteria checklist. It is a table in Confluence, and we've set this up to go down through a project and ask certain questions. And what you will find pretty much standard on all the checklists, the first three questions are pretty much standard. Is there a policy? Is there a procedure? Is there a plan for this process area? And then from there, it'll get more specific to the process area that you're evaluating. As you can see going across the right, we have the date that you did the review. You all know how to do dates in Confluence, and if not, you can get with either myself or Dave. We can help you with that. Furthermore, there's a yes or no column as to whether you found a policy or you didn't find a policy. And a column the farthest to the right is kind of an expanding column. This is an area where you can tell us what the non-compliancy is. You can set up an action item for someone, the PM probably that you're evaluating, to look at whatever might be a problem, something maybe you didn't find. You can discuss that with the PM, but also if it's truly a non-compliancy, we want to see that right in here. So going down the list, first, as we said, the first three questions are, is there a policy, is there a procedure, and is there a plan? After that, in this project planning specifically, we ask, is there a WBS or a high-level scope estimate, like a a PDD or a chart or something like that? So if yes, is there a PDD or a project charter? Answering those questions. If yes, then is the questions are scope defined, schedule defined, budget defined, and are resources needed defined? If so, if yes on all those things, where? And you can answer those questions out here as well. So that gives us not only non-compliancy area, but it also is a further definition and clarification column. So anything that needs to be defined, clarified, or brought out as a non-compliance can go out in this right-hand column. Then we go down, our estimates of work products and task attributes defined. Are the life cycle phases defined? Is data managed? Is there a plan to manage data? Where is it managed? How is it managed? And are responsibilities assigned? So we want to make sure that we monitor and plan and manage our data that is being put out by our project. Moving on down, furthermore, have risks been identified? Is there a plan to handle risks? Are they documented? And is there a risk register? It's very important that we understand what the risks are in the project. So we need to have an answer to these questions. Furthermore, have resources been identified and procured? Do we have the right people in place? Do we have the right tools in place for our project to be effective and successful? Have knowledge and skill sets been identified? And if so, is there a skill set chart? Are they or have they been trained? Or has training been offered? Is training needed? So this skill set is very important. We want to have the right people in place to do the job. Furthermore, our stakeholders identified. This is all part of the planning of the project, and very likely some of this may be done up front in the PDD definition. So some of this may already be in place, but we want to verify that it is there, and if it's not, we need to have it in place. So our stakeholders identified, and if yes, how or where are they identified? And is there a plan to deal with stakeholders? Are they involved in the project? Are they communicated with? Such as our customers. Do we communicate with our customers back and forth? Is the executive team communicated with? Are you communicating with your development team? And are they documented? Where and how are they documented? Do we have a list of them? And if yes, is there a stakeholder list? And furthermore, is there a RACI matrix to assign responsibilities to each person that's part of the project and part of the stakeholder list? And is there a project team org chart? These are all important questions for a project, and we need to have them in place. So these pieces are all part of project planning. Furthermore, have planned commitments been obtained? Has our team, our stakeholders, our executive management looked over this plan, looked over the PDD? Do we have commitments from all levels to move forward? Are work and resource levels being monitored? And if they are, how are they being monitored? And are plans reviewed that could affect the project? And if they are being reviewed, then how are they being reviewed? So this is basically the project planning checklist that you would use if you want to choose project planning as your area that you want to check on another project. So this is the checklist for that. And let's roll back to our presentation here. And here is an example of a completed project planning checklist. And let me roll down to it. Get there just a second. And this is an example completed one, so you can see what the columns look like. As you can see, this was done for our CMMI audit. You can see, we've answered the questions, gone down, the date that we did the review, checked off whether we did find it or whether we did not find it, and if so, if clarification needed to be placed out or to state the non-compliancy, then we put that in place. So just as an example, so you can see what a filled out chart looks like. So And here is that then filters up into what we call an audit non-compliance log. And that's what this is going to look like. We have a log that gets filled out as we do these audits, and the area of review is listed over here, and in some cases the items that are reviewed. And once again, this is a tabular kind of situation. The date that it was reviewed, when if there's an action item, when that action is completed, and if there's a deficiency, as you noted, there may be a non-compliance. That non-compliance then feeds up into this deficiency noted column. And if there's action needed, then we have an action item column here, and you can set it up to be a task for someone to have as a responsibility level for a task that they will have to check off on when they've completed it. And once they complete it, then we can fill in the date that they've completed it on this column. All right, let's roll on here. And then furthermore, once we've completed these audits, we go back and do an audit findings report. And this will go up to executive management. Will come up through me first, and then we'll feed it up so that they can look at where non-compliances are happening, and we can determine what needs to be done and get those things fixed. This is an example one from our CMMI audit. And as you can see here, we've got, you won't have to necessarily worry about these GP numbers. Those kinds of things are part of the CMMI, but we certainly want to focus here on what the finding was. If you had a non-compliance, what was it that you found that was non-compliant, and state out what it is, and then the correction for it or the proposed correction. If a correction hasn't been done, then you could put proposed correction. Determine out here, give some details of kind of maybe restating the finding, and then what needs to be done to fix it, or what you propose needs to be done. Then that can be discussed, much like an issue log, if you will. You determine if there's an issue and determine what needs to be done. This is kind of a similar situation where we come up with a finding or an issue, if you will, and then we have a correction or a proposed correction. But this is a formal document that then gets evaluated by executive management, and we can make plans to get these fixes in place. And so, as promised, here is the project monitoring control checklist. We'll run down that checklist, close a few windows. So once again, it's the same kind of tabular formula here. And as I mentioned before, the first three questions are really the same: policy, procedure, plan, yes or no. And here now, since we're in the monitoring mode, plans already in place, projects already in place, here we're actually talking about, is it being monitored? And here are some of the questions that you're going to evaluate against. Are project actuals being monitored against the plan? Some of this falls from the measurement analysis checklist we talked about last week. So you may want to go back to that, or you may want to do measurement analysis and project planning, project monitoring control together. You may want to do both of those checklists together so you can kind of get an understanding of what's going on in the project. But yeah, if you say yes, is it being monitored for time and schedule, for cost, and for customer satisfaction? Those happen to be our metric criteria stated in our policy. So we're checking to make sure that the project is doing what we state that we check against. Are commitments being monitored? Are they being monitored for time and scheduled, for cost, for customer satisfaction, for scope? We're not having scope creep. We want to make sure our commitments are being monitored so that we don't slip off the rails in any of these areas. Furthermore, just like in the project planning area, have risks been identified? Is there a plan? Are they documented? Once again, is there a risk register? We need to make sure that's not only in place initially, but that it's being monitored and it's being used and it's being evaluated regularly. Likewise, have issues been identified? Is there a plan for issues? Are they documented? Is there an issue log? So that we can determine if an issue is a showstopper or not? Have they been reported to all relevant stakeholders? Has corrective action been taken? It's one thing to just put an issue down, but has action been taken on the issue so that it doesn't develop into something bigger? Is corrective action being tracked all the way to closure? We don't want to just state that there's an issue, maybe even talk about it. We want to make sure that the issue gets closed. So those things are very important when it comes to issues. Furthermore, are stakeholders identified? Do we have stakeholders mentioned and listed? If so, where and how? Is there a plan to deal with stakeholders? Are they involved in the project from all levels, from our project team to our customer, as well as executive management and anybody else in the corporation that needs to be involved? Are they communicated with, and are they documented? And if yes to all those, is there a stakeholder list, RACI matrix, and is there a project team org chart? Very much the same as the project planning, but we need to make sure these things stay updated because things do change over time, and because a project is an actionable over time event, things do change. So we need to make sure that these things stay monitored, stay in place first off, but that they also are looked at frequently to make sure that everything is still the way it should be. And finally, communications. Are project progress reviews being held? And if so, how often? Are project milestone reviews being held? And if so, how often? And are senior management reviews being held? And as well, if so, how often is that happening? So, and once again, answering some of those questions may require a little bit of definition or clarification over in this right-hand column. It's one thing to just say yes or no, but oftentimes we need just a little more definition, a little more clarification, and we certainly need to name off any non-compliancy here. So let's roll on to the PPQA checklist. And once again, it's going to look very much the same. Policy, procedure, plan, yes or no. And here we're looking at our quality assurance. How are we doing as far as staying in line and compliant with standards, with external standards, best practices, those kinds of things? So our process audit's being performed. And if the answer is yes, what is the frequency? Is there a schedule somewhere? And if yes, where is it located? And is there a plan? And if yes, where is that located? Are product audits being performed? And if yes, what is the frequency? How often are we performing audits on our product? Is there a schedule for that? And is there a plan for that? And if the answer is yes to those, then what's the location of the schedule and the plan, so that we know where those things are, and we can track them and make sure that we're following our plans. Are document and data management audits being performed? Are we verifying that our documents are in place and where they're supposed to be, and that our data is in place and where it's supposed to be? Once again, same kind of questions: frequency, schedule, and plan. And if yes, what's the location of those things? And as well, then, configuration management. Are those audits being performed? Are we making sure that the items that are important for our project are in place? Are we monitoring that? Are we auditing those items? Are we making sure that they're still where they're supposed to be, that they're updated, that they're in place and in play the way that they should be? Once again, same kind of questions: frequency, schedule, and plan. And if yes, what's the location? And then as far as all audits, and this is going to affect you guys as you cross-evaluate each other, all audits, even ones that I do, have to be signed off on by someone else outside of me. So I can't do an audit and just say I did it. Somebody else has to check my work, much like what's going to happen as you start to evaluate each other. Most likely it would be me that will check off your work. I'll be your QA of QA. You would be considered the QA auditor, and I would be the QA of QA auditor. Much like when I do an audit, someone like Dave or or another person will check off my work and sign off. So these non-compliances, all these audits, have they been communicated? Much like an issue log, have non-compliances been communicated up? Are they being tracked to resolution? Have they been resolved? And if so, how? Has resolution been communicated to all relevant stakeholders? And finally, are the audit records stored and maintained? These checklists, the non-compliancy log, the formal findings report, and if yes, where are they located? So those kinds of things need to be answered as far as this checklist and the quality assurance kind of check. So anyway, that's that checklist. So as I went through last week, kind of wanted to go through again this week for those that are new, didn't catch it. But even for those of you that may have joined us last week, doesn't hurt to have a reminder. These are some of the findings that came out of our CMMI audit back in February. We'll just quickly let you have a look at those and talk for a minute about some of these things that were found. In the PPQA area, it was determined we needed a little more formal training and that we needed some further separation as to who's doing audits and who's doing the QA of QA. We got further definition as to who needs to do those kinds of things. And that's part of what we're doing here, training QA auditors and QA of QA auditors so that we can have that separation. In addition to doing additional audits, we also have separation of who's doing audits. So that will help us out when it comes time for our next CMMI review. As far as project planning, sometimes they determined that the task estimates didn't seem to match up with the story points. It wasn't easily evident to find. So that was a finding. Project monitoring control, issue analysis, making sure that we not only identified an issue, but that we determined, what corrective action needed to be taking place, and what kind of closure needed to happen, if it's being tracked closure, if it's communicated, all those kinds of things. And as apparently we lacked an actual policy and procedure for project monitoring control. It's something we have to go back and fix. For measurement analysis, something we talked about last week, measurement and analysis data was not easily accessible. So making sure that when you do analysis, that however you do it, that you put it in a place that is easily accessible, that we don't have to spend a bunch of time trying to find the analysis work. It was not hard to find the outcomes of the analysis work, but finding the analysis work sometimes, I know sometimes you all do work on notebook and paper and that kind of things, but as discussed, and if you would go out to a previous brown bag that Lindsay Witt and I did, she talks about how to handle some of these things, making data and analysis work readily available. Furthermore, requirements management, they had no negative findings. That was a very good area. And configuration management, sometimes our products and processes were not objectively evaluated, and that came back in under the stuff from up in PPQA, having some separation in doing that. And then these are some of the findings from our ISO audit back in March. Just very quickly run down these. This is from the PPQA area. It was determined that we needed to have a metrics table for our audit findings report. I just showed the findings report. We needed to have a metrics table, kind of showing how many audits we have planned, how many we've done, how many things we've checked, how many things were compliant versus non-compliant. So that was just a finding that we needed to fix. For HR, having a formal exit interview form and documentation, and having post-training effectiveness surveys, those kinds of things. And then for subcontractors, having a formal selection of vendors and a formal assessment of vendors. Those things were something they were looking for. They weren't showstoppers, but just opportunities for improvement in all three of those areas. So as you know, we got our ISO certification, which was very good. Finally, this is our NDI internal audit schedule, basically going out into really first quarter of next year. And as I mentioned before, we're going to start doing the audits, cross project audits, peer evaluation review audits, starting in June. As you can see here, we have ASC will be the first project up, have Lindsay listed to be the auditor, and I will do the audit work on her audit to be the QA of QA. But if you want to have a look at this, I'll tell you in a minute where this is found, but so you can keep a heads up to see when it's going to be your turn. And all of the pieces that you will need, I will get with you and get them in place as to where they need to be so that you're able to do the audit and to do it effectively. And if you have questions, certainly you can email me or give me a phone call or whatever you need to do, and we'll get you set up for that. So anyway, let me get back here to what we're doing, and I'm going to share my screen, see if there's any questions here. I do have, is there a corporate policy that indicates the frequency of these reviews? What projects qualify for them and who would be required to do them? We don't currently have a policy that indicates who, especially now that we're coming into doing these PM peer review ones. That's a piece we need to get in place. For now, you can consider the schedule as part of the policy, or you're going to be doing a peer review each month and across projects, one project per month. As far as for the full internal audits that I do, those are set up to be one project per quarter. We do basically 2 of the checklists per month, and we do those very detailed, make sure that everything's in place. And then once I've completed the checklists at the end of the 3rd month, then the audit, my audit gets checked off, and we go from there. But we're basically doing 4 projects a year, so we'll do 1 project per quarter. And we will also be doing some ISO audits along the way as well, some monthly checkoffs there as well, along with quarterly internal audits. So as far as the corporate policy, there is a policy about doing PPQA in our policies and procedures in the development area. So hopefully that answered the question. If not, you can certainly send me an email. And if there's no other questions, then that will be pretty much all that I have today. Well, I just want to say thank you for joining us again this week. And if you have any further questions, please don't hesitate to shoot me an email. I'd be glad to answer your questions, and we will go from there. And thank you very much. Have a great day.
All right. Thanks a lot, Larry. Appreciate your time. And let me go ahead and get this wrapped up, and we will send it out, everybody, as soon as possible. You'll be able to watch it online indefinitely. So if you have any questions, go ahead and fire them off to either Larry or myself, and we'll get them answered. Otherwise, have a great day, and thanks for watching.
Thanks.
Larry, do we have another one next weekend, another live one next weekend? Next Friday?
No.
Or we're done with the PM view?
Yes.
Excellent. All right. Thank you, everybody.